Hi guys, thanks very much for joining the latest episode of Amazon Moguls. Today I've got Callum with me. We had a chat maybe last week. I think you jumped on for a 15-minute chat with me, and we ended up speaking for like over an
Something
hour,
like
which was
that.
it's a really good chat to be honest.
Yeah,
You learned some stuff from me hopefully, and I learned a lot from you as well.
yeah, yeah.
So we've arranged this today, and so do you want to tell us a little about your Amazon story, Callum?
Yeah, so when I first started, probably started back in May last year, give or take. So going on nearly a year now with Amazon. And I started off like most people, to be honest, starting on with a low amount of money, probably like a grand, for proof of concept and stuff. And then I started off in like those discords to learn the basics. And then once I got to that point, I just thought, I'll scrap majority of those discords and obviously use a couple for like, A2A and stuff and some good leads. And then you just build it from there. And then I went majority into wholesale compared to like most people, they do like their online retail arbitrage. But I found out with wholesale, it's a lot more, the less pain. You're using usually the same products and you can replenish them for like 8, 9 months, sometimes even longer. You can have the products for, so it's
Yeah, absolutely. So
pretty
yeah,
good.
the biggest thing that stuck out to me was that you're doing wholesale, which is something that I know some people try and get into, but the majority of people do OARA. So wholesale is definitely something more advanced. And I
Yeah.
think I've not even gone to wholesale really. So yeah, that's very interesting. How have you found the wholesale then? And why? So why did you choose wholesale? Just mainly because of the replenishable, or
Um, I think it was more that I think I had a bad experience when I first started with like online
yeah,
and RA. So then I thought, you know what, I'm going to try the one that a lot of people never usually get into for the start. And then I just thought, all right, I'll open a trade account with a couple of them, which when you first start is kind of hard. Back when I only used to have a residential address, so you kind of have to do a lot of talking. You have to. Some of them allow it, some of them don't. Same with even when you're not VAT registered. But I would say it was a lot more beneficial for me to do that because then it allowed me to one actually build rapport with people
yeah.
I work with, and then work out actually reasonable prices rather than sitting, scouring the web for a couple hours a day trying to find like online products.
Okay,
So it's
cool. Yeah,
definitely a lot
makes
better.
sense. Yeah. So and what? Why did you choose Amazon, by the way? How did you discover Amazon in the first place?
So I have a friend who he started it before me. He probably started October,
Hmm.
so before me. And he was like, he just did a bit of RA. He didn't really take it like full serious. And he was like, "Oh, look at this! I'm earning a couple extra 100 quid a month on side of his other stuff." So I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a go. I'll save some
Yeah.
money up, put it to the side, and then ever from then I've asked him questions for like the get go stuff, and then after that just used my own brain, started researching online, and then just built it up from there to the point where me and him are probably
Cool, cool.
around the
So you
same
had your
level
friend to
now.
help you, which is cool, and obviously you saw the potential maybe from him. How have you found wholesale in
100%.
terms of like opening accounts? You have to hit the phones, or do you emailing? And how did that get started?
Um,
How did you open your first account?
my first, I would say my first, it was kind of like tough when I first started because I didn't know no script. I didn't really have any sort of idea on what I'm doing. I just threw myself in there and decided, you know what, this place looks good. And then I started off emailing to start. A couple of them replied, they'll let me, yeah, here you go, here's the price list. But then some other ones would be like, they just won't reply. So then at that point, I just started, you know what, I'm going to start calling. I'm going to start using a script that I built myself and then just adapt it per the wholesaler. And then from that point, I've seen such a big growth
Okay.
from being able to call because majority of the time over the phone, they'll watch your email and then they'll send you the application form straight there. Compared when if you email them, it actually takes so much longer. Like I think I had one probably took me about 4 months because they have such a backlog where they finally got to me. And at that point, when I checked all their products, it wasn't even
Okay,
worth it
yeah,
for me
no,
anymore.
that's interesting. That's really cool. So you got to hit the phones, basically, is the key, guys. That's the
Yeah,
important thing,
key.
and it's a bit scary at times. Maybe it's much easier to email, isn't it? I think than it is to call up. But if you want to get those good accounts, and the great thing is you're not even VAT registered yet, so you're still getting wholesale
No.
accounts, which I thought was you couldn't really do it, but you totally proved me wrong there. Yeah, you're still, and you, yeah, as long as you're willing to hit the phones and things like that. So, what other kind of tips you've got for people who want to get into wholesale? And
In terms of just my big one is just go for it. You'll learn from your mistakes. Try and just if you go over the web and you find some of the lower wholesalers, just call them up, use them as like a little tester because you was never gonna really open an account with them because they're not worth it. But use them to see what they ask you, or in terms of if they get straight to the point. Because some of them, they might be like, you can't really say you sell on Amazon with the wholesalers. Some of them accept it, some of them don't. So you kind of need to tailor what you say to them. Sometimes they'll be like, all right, yeah, if you want to say you're an online seller, then you might be able to get away with it. But at that point, you might require like a website. So that's always a good thing. Build a website. Professional email is also a good one. A virtual address, that's one that I recommend for a lot of people, and actual landline number. So then you actually seem professional, because then if they call you, you can have some sort of system so it goes on like a you being placed in a queue or welcome to whatever your business is. So it kind of builds them thinking, oh, it's actually more of a professional business rather than someone as some wholesalers call Amazon
Yeah,
sellers bedroom
exactly. Yeah.
traders.
So you obviously quickly learn that maybe they don't like Amazon sellers. I guess you told a few of them at the beginning,
Yeah.
and then they were just like, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't do it with you. Literally just straight to the point. Yeah, we don't deal with Amazon sellers. And then some of them, what I've learned, because I always like to kind of question some of them, being like, out of curiosity, do you sell to Amazon sellers? And most of the time, they always give me the same responses. Um, Most Amazon sellers are known for like either driving the price down or they give the brand a bad reputation. That's usually the reason they never open the account, because then their long-standing clients end up losing profits, and then they might just not trade with that
Yeah, so the
company ever
objection is
again.
not necessarily Amazon sellers in itself. It's just obviously they've had bad experience in the past with Amazon sellers. This is what I've gathered from watching podcasts and stuff, is that Amazon sellers come
Yeah,
in, they talk the big talk, and then they make really tiny orders or they cause problems. So I guess a lot of them now,
yeah,
unfortunately, have just like banned Amazon sellers. So even though you, I guess, just don't reveal you're selling on Amazon, and then maybe in the future you can, once I guess when you build a bit more rapport, I guess, and proving that you're a decent customer, you can maybe mention it. I don't know. Yeah,
you could say it.
yeah,
I've never done
yeah.
it
I get
just in
it.
case they decide to shut the
Sure.
account down. But I mean, if you're with them for like months and months, you might eventually say to them, you could just lie and say, "Oh, we're
Yeah,
expanding to sell on Amazon. Is it still all right?" But then you've already got that rapport, so they're always like, "Yeah, you've always placed your orders, you always paid your
yeah.
invoices,"
It's
so they
cool.
probably wouldn't care.
So yeah, what was I going to ask? Yeah, so cash flow wise, so that's been, I guess, quite difficult for you because you can't use Amex like everyone else. So how have you gone about that? Just save
Um,
or
in terms, just I think the way for me when I first started, like I said, I started with a low amount, but then just every month I'd try and put in like 200, £300, and then just build it from there. So then to they get to the point where it's actually fully snowballing each month and getting better and better. A cash flow with wholesalers, it depends on some of them. Some of them they might have a small order, like £500 for example. Some of them 1.5, 8 grand, 4 grand. So it's one of those things where you need to manage your cash flow very, very well. Otherwise, you might end up just getting completely stuck and end up buying from one wholesaler, realizing that you could have bought from another one and got an even better deal
yeah,
for certain products. So it is very hard for when you do start, especially with that low amount. But it is very doable as long as you know what you're going for and just go for the more higher ROI items so you don't end up forking out a bunch of money on only 20, 30% when you aim for more
yeah.
40, 50, just so then you can actually build
Okay,
it up even quicker. But then again, some wholesalers, they do actually accept like Amex and stuff, but it is very limited. Sometimes you need to ask them, do you guys accept cards instead? But then sometimes with that, they might put a 1% fee on it. So then there is some sort of, obviously, you might lose a bit of money from doing it, but
sure.
there's always that option. And there's well some wholesalers as well where their main primary is only card. I've had like one or two in the past. But then when you do bank transfer, you end up getting like a 4% discount. I had
Okay,
on one of
cool. So
mine.
yeah, so it sounds like there's maybe an option there to use a car, but you might get penalised. But maybe you can get that back in the points, maybe.
Yeah,
But if it helps your cash flow and it's a great product. So, but yeah, I guess it's you don't need to start
could
with
be
a
worth
huge
it.
amount. I think it's quite normal for people to start with maybe 1,000, 2,000. You can just keep, if you work a job, you worked a job, I guess, when you started, just put money in over time, and
Yeah,
eventually, once you kind of prove concept. So, yeah, so you're full time now, right? You decided to boom,
full time now. Yeah, literally what going on probably
sick.
2 weeks now that I've started doing full time, quitting the 9 to 5, which is a definitely a risky
Yeah,
thing. But if you know you can do it, then it's worth it. I mean, in the past 2 weeks for me, I've got double, maybe triple the work I would get done normally when I have a 9 to 5. Because I think most of the time, people when they work a 9 to 5, you end up, say if you work 9 till 6, for example, just the average shift, what most people probably work. you end up then after that, you can't really go out to the shops anymore if you do want to do retail arbitrage because they're all shut now. Or if you do want to go, you have to go in the morning, like 8 o'clock. So then you end up having to like balance everything around there. But when you're actually fully free to whatever you want, you can wake up whenever you want. So you're your own boss. And then say if you want to call wholesalers, which is a big one for me, is before I could only really do it on my break. So like my lunch break, for example. And then sometimes you might only get through to one or two, and then you can't do anything for the rest of the day because by the time you get home, all the other wholesalers are shut because obviously they
Yeah,
usually
that's
close at
tough.
5, 6 o'clock. So then now that obviously I'm full time, I can just call them whenever I want through the day. I'll just get like a massive list of the ones that I've found throughout the day, and then I'll give them all a call. And then after that, the rest of the day, if they accept me on the spot, then I'll be able to go through all the price lists. If not, then obviously I'll put it into a different tracker to then eventually go through their list
Awesome. So
once
you
they
did it
do
on
send me it.
hard mode, basically, where you had to like squeeze in calls at work and all stuff. Now you're on easy mode,
Yeah,
but you're going to make even more money. So, well,
literally
congrats for
exactly
quitting your
that.
job on you. I think that's awesome. So, as someone who did the
Thank
same,
you.
basically, and it does Amazon full time now, so that's amazing. So you're only young. You're 19, aren't you? So, you know, hey, just,
19, that's the
I'm
one.
not
Yeah,
saying everything's going to go wrong, but if it does, you can always go back and get a job or figure out another business. So,
you can always
I think it's a
exactly.
great thing. So one thing I've got a question for you with the wholesalers. So let's say you get a list of products from the wholesaler. How often are you finding products
Yeah.
on there? Is it like, and what kind of ratio of like good to bad? Is it like 1 to 100, or
Um, It sometimes it varies for a lot of holes. Some of them I've had really good days where it's like every 1 in 10 products are really good products, or like just a good product in general, and they might have like 700 products, so you do get a good amount from them. But then sometimes you have some which I've gone through. I've spent 3, 4 hours going through, and I found four profitable products, which at which point it's not worth it because you're gonna have to buy a lot of them. But I would say it does vary on wholesalers. Some of them, which are really harder to find, you'll notice you can get a lot more out of them, but that's usually ones with higher like obviously higher in terms of like 4 grand minimum order quantities. But once you do get to that point, you'll be able to really easily find it. I think people overcomplicate stuff like that. Like they think, oh, it's really hard to do it. But the hard part's just learning the basics, and then you might screw up. But once you've learned from that, you're able to learn from your mistake, build on what you've done, and then you'll find
cool.
it
So
even
how are
easier.
you going through these lists? Because I've had lists in the past, and there's thousands of products on there. You don't know where to start. So how do you approach that?
Um, it Two ways. I mean, the old way, which I used to do, I used to just get the spreadsheet up, put it on one monitor, have have a SAS open on the other one,
Yeah.
or anything else, and then just full on go through each one of them. Or the other way, which I've done now, is I've managed to automate everything
Cool.
through AI. So it will actually, what it will do is I'll upload a price list, and then it actually scours through everyone. And usually they have some sort of identifier code. It's either they can identify from the title or like the ENN code. So I usually use that. And then I'll get it to scour the whole Amazon website. And then within some of that took me 4 hours before I get it done
Nice.
in 15
So you're using
minutes.
a ChatGPT then, a custom one, I'm assuming, that you've created, or is it?
Um, it, it's a mix of a couple AIs. ChatGPT was obviously the main one
Okay.
to build the basics, but from that, I still use ChatGPT for like a lot of stuff with Amazon because it's good to use it. But in terms of like, there's some other software which either I've piggybacked off ChatGPT to then use another
Okay.
software to use it. So I would say AI is definitely very good if you know how to use
Cool.
it
Yeah, that was
correctly
one of
with
the things
Amazon.
I was like really intrigued by is how much you're using AI. I obviously know about AI, but I've never actually considered using it for this kind of thing or helping me. I
Yeah,
guess as you get a little bit older, you get maybe stuck in your ways a little bit. Like I'm very tech savvy. I used to be really into tech, but then obviously as you get older, you just kind of like fall off a little bit. So as soon
you
as
just
you were
fall
talking
off.
about
But yeah,
AI and all this, I was like, I bet you're really young. And then you're like, because obviously the first call we did, there was no video, and then you're like, oh, I'm 19. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah,
So you're really embracing new stuff like AI and utilizing it. So you basically got like a personal assistant that does all this stuff for you. And
that exactly. That's like say the main reason like this whole time I never really got a VA is because I
yeah,
never needed one. But
that's
like when if you do decide to get one, then you can still use it for like online arbitrage because you can automate it through AI, but you
yeah.
can't at the same time. It's like very finicky with what you can do because obviously there's still limitations with. how obviously the
Yeah,
model is
absolutely. So what
currently.
else do you use AI for then? Any other tasks to help you?
Um, literally everything. Or I can every invoice I put into a certain thing, it automatically categorizes it on my sheets for me. So whichever day that I purchased the product on, it'll put it into my accounting. So I've got all my invoices all labeled day by day, and then obviously each month. So that automatically does it all for me. Any sort of research I can do, or like one recently, which I thought of doing because I don't usually do RA, but I thought, you know what, I might just go down somewhere and just spend a day and see how much I can earn from it. So, for example, I've just got them to go. For example, for me, I choose leads, and I've managed to make them find me every single, obviously, the main places, and put it all into a list for me. And it's actually planned me the full route out,
Nice.
start to finish, as well for me. And it's also then it gives you the opening times as well, even like the phone numbers. So if you want to call the store ahead of time, you can do
Crazy.
that
So
as
I was a
well with that.
caveman. I did that all myself. I've got the stores and then put them into Google Maps and then drag them around to make a little loop. So I could have got AI to do it for me. So, but I said I just didn't even consider using AI for that. But of course, it makes perfect sense. All the data's there available for it, and it can. It's probably great at figuring out routes, basically. So
Exactly.
that's awesome. So
100%.
how did you? So what kind of technology are you using them for? Or what software are you using to for the invoice uploading? Like what AI are you using for
Uh,
that? How does that work?
it's built into ChatGPT. I forget what the name of the actual model is. Let me see if I
Sure.
can pull it up. It's like some sort of accountancy plugin. Yeah, I
Okay, so
can't
using like
find it.
a,
I'll
I
have to
guess.
try and find it. But it's like an external plugin that's supported by ChatGPT, but obviously you have to
Mm,
then pay obviously for the subscription with it. And then you still need to obviously personalize it around you. And as well, one wary thing is if you do upgrade, do it on an actual
mm.
business account, because then you can actually turn off because they actually analyze all your data to use
Okay,
it for their
yeah,
machine learning and their actual AI model. So what I do is you actually pay for the actual one, which costs a bit more, but it's worth it. Otherwise, if you're uploading all your sensitive data, the actual AI will learn all of it, which is probably the last thing you
absolutely,
want.
yeah. So you're creating essentially a private repository for AI. So AI guys is like it uses all the data basically to create these models. So if you put data in, I suppose it'll use that to build more models. I know coming from a coding background, some people's
Yeah,
code was coming out, some specific code and key and API keys and stuff were being recommended to people. So they had to fix,
yeah,
because obviously that was pooling everyone's data from the internet and any data they put in as well. So that's a good tip. Yeah,
it's
so you have to be
crazy.
careful. You're not actually sharing your stuff out, and suddenly some guys like getting access to your invoices or whatever. So that's okay. That's really
Yeah,
cool. So
that's
yeah, yeah. Wow.
yeah. Honestly, I would say AI is the
Yeah.
future in terms of anything. A lot of if you instead of paying someone a couple £100 a month to do all your admin and stuff, just get yourself a virtual. Basically, just I call it my own
Yeah.
virtual assistant. There's one thing I saw recently. I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically like a handheld phone, but instead of a phone, it's like kind of more. It's got an AI model built into it, and you build the AI as you go, and it's got its like own learning system. So I could literally be like, "This is how you
Mm.
source a product," and then teach it exact step by steps, and it will actually learn
Okay.
how I've done it. And then over time, you could actually build it to be your own full assistant, or you can even make it do emails for you. So I can have it like automate an email. So if a wholesaler replies to me, I can then already generate the response and then obviously change it up so it doesn't sound like AI or can get
Okay.
detected by it as well. And then you just literally either instant reply or you'll ask to confirm first, and then you literally just
Crazy.
input it in.
Yeah, it's nuts to be honest. Hearing you say all this, I just realised I'm just wasting
Honestly,
so much time doing a lot of this stuff myself. Like I'm doing admin today. I could just try and build up a chat, some sort of AI, ChatGPT or whatever, to do this for me. Insane. So yeah, guys, get into
100%.
AI basically. How so? Do you just go onto YouTube and
Lit-
learn how to use AI, or how have you just figured it out?
Um, yeah, a bit of everything. Just literally YouTube, Google. There's not a lot of people talking about it
Yeah,
currently. In all fairness, so I think a lot of it was me learning myself, trial and error, trying all the different methods to learn it. So it's one of those things you need to
okay,
just get stuck in, try and Google, try and do your own research, because really there's not a lot of people out there that already know a lot about
There
it,
might
just
be
how
some
new it
sort of
is.
opportunity there for you, Callum, to start a YouTube channel of teaching people to do it. So that's
Potentially,
something people
yeah.
would be very interested in. So, awesome. So, what
Uh,
kind of sales are you hitting these days? Then, if you don't mind talking about that kind of stuff, how are the sales going?
yeah,
And
no worries. Yeah, decent. I think this month, let me just double check. This month I've pulled up
okay,
15,000 so far in obviously revenue, which this month was a bit more
okay,
slower for me as well because at the start of this month I moved and everything. So for like the first 2 weeks, I've had stock sat at the warehouse. So I
okay,
just
yeah,
wasn't doing anything just because obviously moving and stuff, and you know how long that is sometimes. It's just not even worth trying to do other stuff. But I would say, yeah, my rough figures currently is around 10,
okay.
15K a month. I'm trying to push into the 20K a month, which hopefully I should be
Yeah,
able
and
to do
you're
soon.
so you're not VAT registered yet. Are you doing a prep yourself? Are you using a prep center?
About this, I was prepping everything myself, all my life myself, but now I've just realised if I calculate all the costs and everything, it's actually more efficient for me to use a prep center. So literally the past couple days, I remember after what you sent me, I did full research into it. I just fully flipped my business model to go full prep center because I realized I can use the warehouse, sure, but at the same time, I'm already paying for boxes, I'm already paying for poly bags, labels, and everything, and I'm obviously using a
Mhm.
printer as well. And I've got the cost of the warehouse and obviously travel there and back. So I calculate everything, and it's around, obviously the prep's probably a bit more, but in terms of, if you get value from it, you're not really having to waste your time to do any sort of packing anymore, which is about 70% of
Yeah,
Amazon, to be honest, is actually going to your unit or in your house, wherever you're doing it, and just labeling and sticking them. So it takes out a massive headache, which I think is worth it for obviously the amount you pay. You don't even pay that much, to be
yeah,
honest, 50p a
absolutely.
unit. I think
So
it was that
yeah,
one
and
you
obviously
sent
you
me.
save the most valuable thing in this world, which is time. So when you get older, you
Time,
realize time's
literally.
more important. So yeah, that's no, that's awesome. So you've been doing it a year, and you're doing 10 to 15,000, or just over a year, is it? 10 to 15,000 a month revenue
Uh,
under a year.
under a year.
So
Well, it'll be a
So you've got a
year,
6-figure
May
business,
10th,
basically,
I
in
think
terms
it
of
was.
revenue. And yeah, under a year. So, guys, no excuses. Anyone can do it. Yeah,
It's
absolutely. And
possible.
the sky's the limit with Amazon as well. So, you can just keep growing and growing and growing. And of course, once you go back registered, you'll be open up to a whole new world of opportunities when it comes to wholesalers. So, and obviously, you've got all the
Yeah,
experience with the okay ones, but you'll get hopefully, some really good ones. And you'll,
yeah. I do have a
nice.
couple lined up for back registration where they've been like, we would accept you, but you need to
Okay,
be back
cool.
registered. So once that happens, hopefully
Mm.
that should be in May. So once that does happen, then I'll just email them, been able to get even bigger profits as well, because obviously they work directly with obviously the brand. They're the actual distributor rather than the wholesaler, because obviously you go brand, distributor, wholesaler, and
Okay.
obviously you have more, usually some other lower wholesalers that buy from other
Yeah.
wholesalers. So usually it's best to go straight to a distributor, but then that's when you won't be able to unless you're usually VAT registered or willing to
Yeah.
spend a lot
Okay.
a
Yeah.
month
So
with them.
every layer you add in is an extra cost to your product because everyone needs a percentage for their profits, don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and 4 or 5 layers in there. God, there's no money to be made. So yeah, absolutely. Which is why you probably see when you get
Yeah,
these ones you can sign up online for, and you get the list there. There's no money, and it's cheaper sometimes to go down to Tesco's and get it than it is
yeah.
to buy from a wholesaler, as they call themselves, online. So
Literally, I've had times where I've literally found products and been like, oh, maybe this is good. I'll go paste it on Amazon. I can go buy it off Amazon for 3 quid, and the wholesaler's trying to make me buy it off
yeah,
them for six
exactly.
quid
I've
a
had the
unit.
exact same thing as well. So yeah, I think I was looking at some cling film, and it was like £1 more expensive than I could get from like B&M and stuff. I'm like, man, obviously they're just too many layers there, or they're just not. They weren't really wholesalers. I think sometimes you get these places that seem to be wholesalers, but they're just online retail stores, really. Yeah, ones
Online
where you can just
sellers,
sign up
yeah,
online as well. So yeah, so I've not hit the phones or anything like that. So I've been quite lazy, to be honest. But yes, any big mistakes you've made at all when you started, or
uh, yeah. On it. I've
mm,
probably made a lot of them, but you don't learn
sure,
without making mistakes. I think probably. Let me see. In terms of my biggest one, I've never had anything too crazy now that I think of it. I've probably had with a wholesaler once where I bought a lot of different products, and like five of them I checked before that Amazon was on the listing like a month ago, but they haven't been on it since. And I thought, you know what, I might be able to just squeeze and just get some quick sales out of it. Next thing you know, I've sent everything in, I check again, and six of the products are now losing 70% ROI, for example. So that would probably be my biggest loss. Probably a couple of like maybe like 100, 200 quid. But then obviously the rest of the wholesaler compensates for that. But I'd probably say that's my biggest in terms of losses. Because usually what I always say as well is just when you do the research, just double do it, and just obviously double check. Because at the end of the day, sometimes with people they always chase revenue rather than profit. So they might be like, you know what, I might be this earns me £10, but realistically they're only earning 30, 40p profit. So that's one big thing that I tried to switch my mind from, is not the actual, yellow bars that you
Yeah.
see, orange. It's your actual profit figure is
Yeah,
what you
see,
should
I don't
care
know
about.
why people post the yellow bars because they literally mean nothing. They look good. They look good for social media, but they mean absolutely nothing. Okay, cool. That's a good tip. So yeah, I guess it's quite. So when you do OARA, you get a lot of exposure to keeper charts, and you get to read the chart. I guess with wholesale, maybe you don't get quite as much experience. Maybe or how did you
Um,
find that?
it 50-50. I still do, obviously, I still do analyze all the charts and everything. That's the main thing that I say is analyze the charts. That's the main one, because obviously you check everything on there. But as well, at the same time, you don't really obviously utilize a lot of like
Hmm.
keeper, for example. I find myself using more sats
Okay.
than actual keeper when it comes to wholesale. But at the same time, I do use obviously to check, prices and everything as well, like the history and stuff. So I always say use both of them, but the main one you do use
Okay.
is SaaS. Usually people as well, they use like Buybot for wholesale as well, but I've noticed with Buybot their actual sales statistics is very off when it comes to the some wholesale products I found, because I used that when I started, and I just found out SaaS was a lot better in terms of
Okay.
actual
So
accuracy
I think
as
Buybot
well.
Pro have like a wholesale scanner, don't they? I think is that built in. So that may be why people use it. I'm not sure, to be honest. I
Um,
can't remember the features on it. But
I want to be
okay,
I want to be
cool.
too
So and
sure.
you said you were doing a little bit of OA as well. Now, why have you decided to sort of branch into OA and maybe RA as well?
Uh, it's just more to like fill the gaps in some, like sometimes obviously with the amount you're waiting for a lot of
Okay.
cash to come out in terms of placing your 4 grand orders. And I thought if I can get myself obviously a business credit card, which I did, I decided, you know what, I might as well use that to utilize it online and actual, get those bigger margins. So I'll aim for like a higher margin online compared to wholesaler, just to get that extra, even if it only gets you an extra grand profit, 2 grand profit a month, it still adds with your wholesale. And you should never only just what I say is put all your eggs in one basket, because sure, I might only do wholesale, but imagine one wholesaler just stopped working, for example, and they just shut down. I could potentially lose, 40% of what I'm earning. Whereas if you split it up and do a bit of online, I mean, retail, if you want to do retail, then fair enough. But, that's if you actually want to go out there and go to all your stores and stuff. But if you prefer to chill, go on your computer and just obviously do it all on there, then that's the reason I
Yeah.
just do online. I just can't be bothered to really spend like 4 or 5 hours going around
I'm the
all the
same, to
shops
be
and
honest,
everything.
but there's something great about RA sometimes when you can go in and just walk out with £200-300 worth of profit or more, But it's when you're not finding
Yeah.
something, you're driving around all day, and it's just like, this sucks. Why am I doing this? I wasted 5 hours and a bunch of petrol, and I've got nothing to show for it.
And you've got
Yeah.
literally nothing.
So
Yeah.
I do advise new people to get into RA, just because obviously the high you get way better ROIs. You can get 100, 200,000% sometimes.
Yeah.
So how are the ROIs? How have you found those in terms of the wholesale? On the lower end, or you know?
Um,
Okay, crazy.
40%
So
ROI, give or take. Some stuff as well. I've got like probably about 20 products that are like they're mainly beauty ones, but they're giving me 150%
okay.
ROI.
Oh wow, that's crazy. So yeah, I guess. Well, I had the misconception that maybe wholesale was like low ROIs, but 40% is pretty good, and obviously anything above that's even better. So in OA, we aim for like 30%.
Yeah.
So I think I guess with wholesale, there's not as much competition, I suppose. So I guess a lot of your listings, do you have many sellers
Yeah.
on there, or are the wholesalers? Have you noticed
Um,
yeah?
depends on some of them. some of them might have, I usually aim for like, it depends on obviously sales and how much sales a month it gets. But usually most of them probably have like 4 or 5 people on them. But then usually with like the bigger, obviously wholesalers I work with, there's not a lot of competition on there. And usually the people on there are already like kind of big sellers, they've already got hundreds and hundreds of reviews compared to like some smaller ones, which I sometimes use, if I can get like a quick product from them, which you'll see usually like 20 people on there. And then you'll have a lot more new sellers on there as well. And usually those products only last you
Okay.
about a month because the price gets
Yeah.
driven down
So have you
penny
tried
by penny.
reverse sourcing anyway? Have you noticed any regular sellers like, oh, this guy's selling this product same as that me and another one, and then like maybe I can reverse source him and see if I can get those products on my sheet because they might have the same supplier
Uh,
as you.
I have. I think I've done it. I've
Yeah.
done it a couple of times in terms of just going through people's stuff and going back to AI as well. With that as well, I just managed to fully automate it to reverse search them onto my
Okay.
price list, for
Crazy.
example. So, say if I'm going directly to one wholesaler, I can just say, this is the person's seller like ID. Obviously, you can see the storefront, and obviously, you can get a plugin that connects obviously your AI to the internet, and then so it can do live time tracking, and then it usually can just search that whole person's thing, and then it'll tell you the products on there, and then usually, obviously, you'll have to sort through them yourself to see if any of them do sell well. But then usually, if the person's already selling, it
Yeah,
already
yeah,
sells well.
okay. That's all crazy. Again, another use of AI. So I've done something similar, like created some software to do it for me, but yeah, that's kind of crazy that you cool. See, because you want to look for smart sellers, don't you? That's why I was thinking. They're doing that. I found a good product there. Someone else is
Yeah.
selling it. Then maybe they're smart enough to be finding other products that I've not found. They're probably doing the same to me, so that's cool. So have you got
Yeah,
any
exactly. Yeah.
advice for new sellers? Someone who wants to get into Amazon and maybe do wholesale or, you know,
Let's see.
yeah.
Brand new. If
Or someone who's
you're
just
going
started
straight into
maybe and,
wholesale, just get in there like first couple of months is just don't be afraid to make mistakes. Honestly, I just you're most likely gonna screw up here or there, but don't use that as like a dismotivator. Just learn from it, build on what you've done, and then obviously go up. Or even if you've not started, start off with like I did, 500, 1,000, whatever you can afford to put in. Use it as a proof of concept. Show that you can actually, build a business from it, and then just go from there. And as well, like I said earlier, just don't focus on your profit. Don't focus on
okay.
your orange
Good
bars.
advice there. So yeah, guys, don't be afraid to get stuck in and just get going. Basically, don't plan forever. Sometimes you get
Yeah,
like analysis paralysis, isn't it? Where you just don't want to start. But yeah, I think that's some good advice
yeah.
there. So, and in terms of like buying their first products from wholesalers, like, would you recommend to go like wider or deeper or um,
Um, Usually, I would say is because obviously when it comes to like wholesale compared to like online, so online you might be able to get only 10 of them, so you want to grab all
mm,
10 straight away. Compared to wholesale, there's a lot of stock, so you do an actual small order first, just so obviously it's like a test order. So say if your product sells 100 times a month, you want to get a week supply is usually what I do, just so then if the product doesn't sell well, you've only lost a small amount of money compared to if you put a whole month's in straight off, you'll lose the whole amount. So that's one big thing is don't over order
okay,
when you first start. Just use that because obviously you've got your softwares that tell you the sales, but the real data you'll get is from actually
absolutely,
selling the
yeah,
product,
yeah,
and that's what I use to determine how much you want to order. And then usually I only order about 2, maybe 3 weeks
okay.
supply at a time because obviously there's always variables that might go in. Some people might order more, but it obviously all depends on how quick it sells and
I guess
obviously if
as
it's
well if you
worth
can
it or not.
replan it as well. That's the great thing about wholesale. Hopefully, you can replan these over and over and over until I guess they stop doing the brand or just keep selling out. I guess or um, so that should
Exactly,
help
yeah.
with cash flow as well. Because with OA, and sometimes if there's a great deal on, you just need to buy. Well, I'd find as much of stock as possible before that deal is gone. So yeah, with wholesale,
Yeah.
that's going to help as well. Awesome. Well, thanks very much for coming on. Anyway, have you got any socials you want to share or? Um,
Nah, I don't. I was gonna
no
set them up
problem.
before this, but then I just
Well,
I just didn't have the time. So I might
if
get
you,
some set
yeah,
up.
if
So
you
if
do,
I do,
yeah,
I'll
we
let
can
you
always
know.
put them down below. But yeah, thanks very much for coming on. Hopefully, people really enjoy this. I think you've got a great with knowledge there with the AI stuff, and it's just great to see someone like you starting out and just crushing it basically. So, and I think you're going to be very successful on
Yeah.
Amazon. So, yeah, hopefully people enjoy this episode and take inspiration from it, as I have. So, I've learned a lot from you. So, yeah, thanks, guys. Anyway.